We're doing the one chip challenge.
Today we're going to be doing the cinnamon challenge.
This is gonna be easy.
These 15! 10 commandments!
I'm increasing my supervision of our media department, just in case you're wondering. Dumb decisions. I remember one time I was washing my Jeep Cherokee. I decided to wash and wax it because that seemed a thing to do, and it occurred to me as I was doing it that the roof of the car is the one that needed the wax the most because it's the most exposed to the sun. Well, if you know me, you know that I'm not 7 feet tall. I'm not even 6 feet tall. And so to get on the roof of the car, I had to climb up a step ladder. So I managed to wax half of it so that it was shiny, it looked good, and then I needed to move the other half. The problem was that I'm literally on the roof of the car, and I moved on to the part that I had waxed. It was really good job because I started to slide off the back of the car. And I couldn't reach for anything to hold because everything was a slick, smooth surface. So I went off the back of the car. I landed on my feet on the driveway, which was on a slight hill, and then at a backflip on the concrete to end up standing up. The Olympic judges would have given me a 10, but I felt like a fool. Note to self, when you're waxing the top of your car, do it a different way. We make dumb decisions, and people try to stop us, don't they? If we take the edge off my mic just a little bit. People try to stop us. Pontius Pilate, it's actually greatly debated. If you want an interesting Bible study, you can Google this or talk about it in your class sometime. But it's actually greatly debated how much exactly is Pontius Pilate responsible for the crucifixion of Jesus. The answer is definitely some, but if you read each of the Gospels, each one is a little nuanced as to exactly what Pilate's role was. In Matthew's account, it sounds like he and others want to get in the way. What crime do you see in this man? Why are you so upset with him? Other people talk to Pilate in other Gospels saying, I'm not sure you're doing the right thing. Other people try to get in the way of this decision, but Pilate doesn't listen. People all the time are trying to give us guidance, but to help us, what's got to happen is we've got to have the capacity to hear. I remember my high school English teacher, senior year, a guy named Bill Borowitz. We were reading Moby Dick, which to me looked incredibly long and incredibly dull. How could you write hundreds of pages about a whale? The Bible has a whale story in Jonah. It's only 4 pages. Surely God would want this to be shorter, right? And so we have the copy of Moby Dick in front of us. We are all looking at the book ahead, lecture number 1 from him. And he says these words, if you are thinking about how to get out of this, and I was, you remember Cliff Notes? Yeah. How many pages are those? 4? Gosh, audiobooks. I just get the gist of this. If I had had Google, oh my gosh, I could have circumvented my entire education. I could have. Right? It's not that funny. But then he said these words, my high school English teacher, St. Bill Borowitz, he said, if you are thinking about how to get out of this, and we all were, he said, my only advice to you, can you finish the phrase, is to get into it. Get into it and see why this is a great story. See why this matters. See who Herman Melville is. See what it is that this fish represents and the captain and all the characters. I didn't do it. I spent the whole year trying to get out of it. But you know what? I went to college. Thank you, God. And there I decided, you know what? He was right. The way to get out of everything is to get into it. And I turned my brain on. It was fresh. It was ready to go. It had no miles on it. It was. So when I fired that baby up, it was awesome. And 4 years later, I had a college degree, and much to the chagrin of my high school faculty, graduated magna cum laude with honors from my university. They were shocked, stunned, except those that believed in the resurrection of the dead. They knew that such things were possible, right? I didn't listen. I didn't listen as a senior in high school. I didn't listen at the right time. But their words stayed with me and shaped my decision in years to come. And so as we talk about kind of what it is to make a good decision, as we look at some people who didn't, it's such an incredible opportunity for you and I to learn and to say, you know what? Other people have been faithful in the past. We can learn from their example. But the Bible also tells us of people who have been unfaithful in their decisions. And Pontius Pilate is one. And perhaps we can learn. What is the root cause of Pontius Pilate's failure? There are many contenders, and I don't know that necessarily I have a bead on exactly what it is, but I would guess it is something like this. Pontius Pilate, at the end of the day, is someone who wants to take the easy way out. He wants to keep the peace. That is what he is there to do as Roman governor. The more east the Roman Empire went, the more the empire was interested in governors keeping the peace. You could bribe people, you could be corrupt, you could be evil, you could be nasty, you could be vicious, you could be vile. But if you kept the peace, you would keep your job. And so what Pontius Pilate is interested in doing most at the end of the day is preserving his version of order. And so after he debates the crowd, after he sort of, quote unquote, washes his hands of this, which he really doesn't completely, let's just be honest. After he does these things and says these things, he takes the course of action that is simplest for him so that he might keep the peace in this city that he is paid to govern. Now keep in mind, he did this with an iron fist. The Roman Empire, in the early days of Jesus' life, Jesus would have just been a kid. There was a rebellion in Jerusalem, a political one, military one, and Rome crushed it. And in response, what they did is set up 1,000 crosses with leaders of this Jewish rebellion movement on it, and they left their bodies on the crosses in the city of Jerusalem until they rotted to the core. Jesus, when he was a young kid, if he had gone to Jerusalem with his mom and dad, Mary and Joseph, very likely saw that as a young boy. 1,000 crosses, 1,000 people killed, with the message very simple: you disobey Rome, and this happens to you. The layers of corruption were vicious. Zacchaeus, who's a tax collector in our scripture, we may think of this as an innocent vacation Bible school story. The truth, probably much closer, is that he bribed Pilate to get his position, and then he made sure he extorted from those under him more than he had to pay. He was the mob. He was organized crime. And as long as everybody kept the peace, politically, all would be well. Pontius Pilate is making that kind of decision. He's taking the easy way so that what he thinks is right and good can stay just the way it is. Let's simplify things a little bit. If you and I were to live lives where we just took the easy way out, what would we look like? What would our families be? Who would we be as people? If we just did what the easy way was, or maybe to translate it in today's culture a little bit more, if we just did what feels good to us, we'd be a disaster. I don't know about you, but when I go to the grocery store, I'm one of these people that walks down every aisle, regardless of what I need or how much I need, right? Every single aisle. My kids hated it when they shopped with me. Are we going to walk down every aisle, Dad? Yes, we are. Thus saith the Lord. Got it? Good. Fall in. They griped, they complained, they moaned. I didn't care. We walk down every aisle, and the reason we did, or the reason I do still to this day, is because when I'm in the grocery store, the food talks to me. Does it talk to you? Which aisle speaks the loudest? Is it the cauliflower? I've never heard cauliflower utter a single word. I can say the same for avocados and asparagus and broccoli and Brussels sprouts. They are mute in every way. Pringles, on the other hand, have an extensive vocabulary. They speak my name. If I ate the easy way and did what seemed good, it would be a total disaster. And the same is true for us morally and spiritually. Because the way we're wired is that there are parts of us, the gifts we have, that are very conducive to the gospel. There will be ways in which we find it easy to be holy and righteous because of the spiritual gifts that God has given to us. But the other reality that we have to contend with, and this is much of what Moby Dick talks about too, is that there is a vile side to us. There is a broken nature in us. And so what we hear and what we think and what we feel is going to be far from perfect. And there's going to come a day where we recognize that to really be the person God intends me to be, I'm going to have to overcome some obstacles and make some really difficult decisions about who I am and what I do and the relationship that I have with God and others. This is not going to be easy. It's going to be an uphill climb. And then one day we wake up and realize the only way we're going to crest that hill or meet that challenge is with the help of somebody else named Jesus. And that day is a big day. But it takes a decision on our part to take that on. It takes a decision to encounter our sinful and short-sighted nature. It takes a decision to overcome that I think Christ in some way is waiting for from all of us. This week, I've been reading Dietrich Bonhoeffer's sermons. He was somebody who was very influential to me early on in my faith. Many of you know his name and his works. He was, if you don't, he was a German theologian in the days of the rise of Adolf Hitler and Nazi Germany, and he wrote scathing and preached scathing messages against the church in Germany about the cheap grace, quote unquote, that it practiced. In that it talked all about how Jesus was kind and needed to forgive. It talked about all the benefits a life with Christ offers, but nowhere did the church rise and oppose what was going on around them, and Bonhoeffer took them to task. To such a degree that he ended up in a concentration camp where he was murdered by the Nazis a few weeks before the camp he was in was liberated by U.S. soldiers. But his work still hangs on today, and I was reading one of his sermons from 1928, an Advent sermon. And what's interesting is he's much younger as a preacher, but you can still in his words see, and he had a phrase that I really liked. He said, Christ calls a person. He actually said Christ calls a man, but we'll be in the modern context. Christ calls a person to make a fundamental decision for Christ, to stand in the gap and make a decision about whose you are going to be. His was a gospel, Bonhoeffer's was, of individual responsibility, where each and every one of us holds ourselves accountable for the decision we make. And the truth is, we either rise to meet the challenge that is before us, or we wither. And Bonhoeffer had no room for pansies. All of us step up. All of us make a decision. If there is a gap between what Jesus would have us be and where we are, the Christian stands in that gap and gets the job done. Over and over and over again in Bonhoeffer's preaching, you hear that message of responsibility, and I think it's fantastic. What would Pilate have done different if he had somebody like that in his life? Somebody who demanded it, maybe instead of taking the easy way, he dug deeper to see what might truly be going on. And if he had that chance, if he had that gift, would he have done something different? I think there are a few things that we can kind of take from him, just as practical things for us. as far as how do I make a good decision. And the first thing I would say is you need to surround yourself with good people. If you find yourself lonely, if you find yourself doing this Jesus thing by yourself, pull some people around you and let them counsel you. Get in a group, right? Get in a Sunday school class. You will meet some of the most fantastic people you have ever met. You will also meet some people who irritate you to no ends. And it takes both. Because those are the people that are going to say the things. Be the people who say the prayers. Be the people who hold your hand. And as we do that, as you surround yourself with those people, you will grow and you will change. It's not always easy, but you will feel the benefit when you do. The other side of that is that if you're doing this solitary Christian thing, it is just a matter of time till the devil picks you off. It's just a matter of time. He is smarter than you and can outflank you in every single way. The best protection I know against that, or one of the best, is to surround yourself with great people. How else can we avoid a Pontius Pilate kind of failure? I would say one of the ways we can do it is to be humble. And I will tell you, that is a struggle for me. When I cook dinner for our family and I say, how is it? And they say, it's great. I say, I know, isn't it? It's awesome, right? God. I am wired the wrong way. But humility is something that I think it takes to protect us as we make decisions. We have to recognize, even no matter how elementary we think the decision is, we may be wrong or incomplete in what we know. And if there's humility in us, all of a sudden I think there's a window for God to move and protect us when we're incomplete. I was reading an article in the Wall Street Journal about the Israeli government that has this rule. It's actually Israeli intelligence. And the rule is this: if 9 people or 10 people are in a room and 9 people think it's a good idea, the 10th person has to argue against it. The 10th person has to take the other side. The 10th person has to do everything they can to persuade the other 9 that the decision is wrong. And the reason the Israeli government operates that way is because they have been burned in the past, and people have died as they've decided to do the wrong thing. So they built in some humility to the system. If 10 people are in the room, 9 people say one way, the 10th works to advocate the other. Humility can do that for us. It simply opens a window for God to have a different conversation. Maybe we decide to do what it is in the end we did, or maybe God will allow us to see a more complete set of facts. The final thing I'd recommend a group, recommend humility, is that I've been doing these congregational visits with all the groups at First Methodist Houston. I've met with several groups, look forward to meeting with several more. But one of the things I've noticed is this, is that First Methodist Houston has an amazing collection of very powerful Christians. We have people who have been bedrock Christians for a really long time and have encountered, learned a lot about Scripture, have done all sorts of things in the name of the kingdom. It's really an impressive collection of people. So when you have folks like that, or I'm talking to folks like that, you say, well, what's the challenge? What am I going to do new? I've been coming to church for years. What am I going to do new as we talk about decision making? And I would say to you this: take on the fullness of the gospel. There is probably some part of the gospel that you find challenging because you're not wired or gifted that way. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, mercy, self-control. Which one of those is tough? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, mercy, self-control. There is one of those that you would really just honestly, when you read the Bible, you cover that word up. I would rather it not be there. Maybe for some of us it's patience. All God's people said? Yeah, I know. I've been here 3 years now. I'd say none of us have a lot of patience, if you ask me, or very few. So what if you took that on and said, this week, I'm not good at it. It's hard for me, but I am going to be patient this week. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to drive 10 miles per hour slower than the speed limit everywhere I go this week. And I'm going to pray for every single person who passes me, no matter what their disposition might be. 7 days of patience, right? What if love your enemies is something you don't do really well? Say, you know what? I like holding a grudge. I just do. I'd rather hold on to that hate than move past it, so love my enemies. Well, what if you took that on in a just a small way, but as an example that could turn something into a larger way? In the first game of football season, you root for the Dallas Cowboys to prevail. What if you took that on? Oh, did you feel the temperature plummet? Oh, yes, new preacher at First Methodist Houston coming soon. There's part of the gospel that's tough for you. Take it on. Step up. Make a decision. Do not allow for yourself to be incomplete in your witness. God has the ability, the Holy Spirit has the power for you to be more tomorrow than you are today. And as Christians, we are called to take that on and not retreat from it and whine about it and say, oh, I'm this, I'm that, I'm tempted this way. No, overcome it. Claim the victory that Jesus gave to you on the cross and be that better, different, more powerful Christian, that witness for him. When was the last time you really invited somebody to know Jesus through your words and your witness? When was the last time you extended an invitation for somebody to get to know Christ in a powerful way? When was the time you were the leader, that you stepped up and made the group happen or made the class a car and took some responsibility for what God has given you in your faith? Do you see the difference? It's a Bonhoeffer kind of Christian. It's a personally responsible Christian who steps up and makes the decision that Jesus asked for rather than waiting for him to do it for us. And you know what? I think Jesus was incredibly moved by people like that. The Roman centurion, he comes by. The Roman centurion needs help for Jesus. There's somebody who's sick and dying in his household. And he says to Jesus, if you say the word, it'll be done. I've got people under me. They've got people under them. I say it, they do it, they do it. That's how this goes. He was taking responsibility for the ability to make a decision. And it moved Jesus. He said, never have I found such faith in all of Israel. That person who stepped up, who made the call, who made the choice, it's somebody Jesus admired and moved through. You and I can be that person. Stop waiting for Jesus to do it for you. Rather, realize he's one step beyond you, and he's asking for you to take that first step towards him. It makes such a difference. Pontius Pilate, you may not know, lost his job. He was removed by Caesar for failing to keep the peace in Jerusalem, and he was banished, which meant he was sent into a life on the fringe of the Roman Empire, where he was destined to live anonymous days where no one ever heard of him, and all he had to do was reflect on the decisions that he had made. Today, he's remembered for the moment most where he did not step up and find a different way. He took the easy way out. You and I are in this life today, and the same fork in the road, if it's not in front of us now, it soon will be, about the kind of life you and I want to live. And there's one where we step up, where we ask Jesus to lead the way, and we go down that path. And then there's another where we take a simpler, easier way. One of these will lead to significance. One of these will lead to holiness. One of these will lead to a kingdom being built that goes beyond anything you or I could ever imagine because it's completely from Christ. And the other, let's just say it's darker. It's lonelier, it's isolated, and it's one filled with regret where the facts are lost to history and to time. Don't be that person, but realize also that the difference, the choice, is yours. What kind of Christian are you going to be? And is it time for you to step up and claim all of the gospel? Pray with me. Thank you for joining us today. We want you to know, no matter where you are or how you worship with us, you are always part of our church family. We would love to have you join us live downtown at 8:45 or 11 o'clock, or as always, through the broadcast. We would love to hear from you. If you have a question about today's service, if you would like to contact one of our pastors, if we can pray for you in any way, please reach out to us through our church website. Thanks for worshiping with us today. It was great to have you with us.